So today we're going to be continuing on with our Era series as we have three more messages, or actually, two or three more messages. I have to pray through the last one if I'm going to speak that. But it's been around over 3 months that we looked at the life of Moses and we looked at the life of Elijah. And we look at the life of Elijah and we look at how much God used him, right? We heard 2 weeks ago that God brought fire from heaven, that God brought the rain after 3.5 years of drought, that God used Elijah mightily, even with the widow, by raising her son from the dead through Elijah's ministry. So you see, Elijah's life is filled with such blessing. He is used so mightily by God, and yet in this story, we will come to find him in his low light, in his lowest moments. And hopefully through his story, you may be encouraged to know that the Bible is not only about the blessings, the glory of God, but is also how God moves in our lowest moments. That even in our humanity, especially through our humanity, that God reveals himself to us and through us. We're going to be opening up our Bibles to 1 Kings chapter 19, as we said. If you need translation, we have 한국어 통역, in 동시 통역, and so you could turn to that QR code. Also, if you have any questions during the message, as we've said, we want this to be interactive, not didactic, but dialogic, where if you have any questions, follow up. Now, we would love to answer them, and so we'll have the QR code as well. But we're going to be opening to 1 Kings chapter 19. We're going to be starting by reading verse 1 through 4, and we'll be going on with this passage. Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah has done, and how he had killed all the prophets with the sword. Then Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah, saying, "So may the gods do to me, and more also, if I do not make your life as a life of one of them by this time tomorrow." Then he was afraid. He arose and ran for his life and came to Beersheba, which belongs to Judah, and left his servant there. But he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness and came and sat down under a broom tree. And he asked that he might die, saying, "It is enough now, O Lord, take away my life, for I am no better than my fathers." So this story for me, for the longest time, was a crazy story. Because for many of us, there's something that we desire most in our life. And when we accomplish it, we think that that will lead us to celebration, right? If there's something you've been aiming for all your life, you think that when you are able to see it through, that you will celebrate. But the thing for Elijah is he accomplished so much. Number one, he started to reform the nation. The 400 prophets of Baal that have been lying to the Israelites, that have been ruining them spiritually, that have been allowing decay in the land to arise, they were judged and they were killed for their corruption. He saw the hand of God where he ran faster than the chariot of Ahab. In a land of drought for 3.5 years, his prayer brought rain to the land. You would think that he would kick back in the seat, take a sip of kombucha, and say, "God is good." And yet, what do we see here? Even through the victories, from one phrase from Jezebel, this queen, said, "I will do to you what happened to the priests of Baal. You will die today." And what is Elijah's reaction? It was fear. After the greatest miracle, you see that his initial reaction of fear, it drove him from the north. So he was at the north, right? He was in Israel, the northern part of Israel. It made him flee all the way to the south to Judah, where Jehoshaphat was king. And eventually he ran away 1 day's worth into the wilderness. And there's a lot that we can kind of parse from this part of Elijah's life. One thing we come to find right after his mountaintop moment Elijah faces a deep valley. And actually, the trigger to Elijah's, what we will see, his depression, is in his first reaction to crisis, to hardship, to pain, was fear. And that fear drove him away with his own 2 feet, away from the glory of God, far, far, far away, where it was not enough that he was safe in the land of Judah, who actually tried to honor God as best as he could, but made him flee even further away from people into the wilderness alone. And in this passage, we come to find something about depression. The reason why we are depressed is that we have somehow gotten from a place that where we were in a good place. We were surrounded by people. We were in faith. We were struggling, but we still were pressing forward. And we were driven from that place because of the initial fear that we have, and it grows and grows and grows until we're brought into a place of isolation, where, like Elijah, we end up alone under some proverbial tree, and we say, "It's enough, Lord. Honestly, take away my life. It's too hard to live. I'm too downtrodden. I can't do this by myself." And one thing we come to find after major breakthroughs, and for many of us, we love the Lord. You know, our motto is radical obedience. And so we are really, really, really giving our best to trying to live as a disciple of Christ. And in this context, after maybe major breakthroughs, maybe you've had a great missions, a great ministry success, answered prayer, blessings from Sunday even. We just had retreat. God has revealed things for you. But when our mind starts to wander, the enemy often whispers, "You didn't do enough." Or, for many of us, you're still alone. After the victories, after God's glory, after God's provision, we come to find amongst God's people that Satan sends the cavalry. He does everything he can to turn us from faith to fear. And we come to find from this passage that even and especially the strong believers, the strongest believers, can fall to despair. That Elijah, at the pinnacle, experiencing the pinnacle of God's glory, it was simply responding initially with fear that led him completely astray. That even those who have mature faith, if we respond even for a moment to the lies of the evil one, we grab on to the things he says to us, that we are alone, that we are not enough, that we have failed. And even if we grab onto it for one moment and we continue to grab onto that, it will spiral us out of control, and we will eventually come to find that maybe circumstantially we've been isolated, but on the most part, we have withdrawn. We have stepped away, and for some of us, we have ran away from who we are. One thing I want to encourage you, do not mistake fatigue for failure. But Elijah did. Elijah mistaked that fear for his reality. And that fear became his reality. He grabbed it and he spiraled out. And also from this, and I say this to my leaders all the time, we always need to beware of post-victory vulnerability. After triumph, there is temptation or fear that strikes the hardest. And this is not only spiritual, this is also in life. That when we experience the glory of God, we experience how greatly He is moving. When we let go of that faith and we feel that we're left alone, the gap is that much bigger. And when we feel that that is our reality, that is when we do spiral. And that we need to learn to guard our hearts especially after victories, especially after God's blessing. And one thing we come to find from Elijah's story is that spiritual highs are often followed by emotional lows. Church, our life is not linear. For some of us, it may feel linearly on a downward trend, on a decline. But even if, for many of us, we are faithfully attempting to live, it's not linear. There are ebbs and flows. There are moments that God honors you and He blesses you, and there are moments that you have not, that you have lack. In this moment, the question is, do you draw closer in faith to God? Or do you grab onto that fear and do you spiral? Elijah spiraled, and we'll see how God responds to him. So we look at verse 5 through 8. It says this, "And he lay down and slept under a broom tree. And behold, an angel touched him and said to him, 'Arise and eat.' And he looked, and behold, there was at his head a cake baked on hot stone and a jar of water. He drank and ate and lay down again. And the angel of the Lord came again a second time and touched him and said, 'Arise and eat, for the journey is too great for you.' And he arose and ate and drank, and went in the strength of that food 40 days and 40 nights to Horeb, the mount of God." You know, sometimes, as we said, fear leads us to depression, and sometimes it's hard to wake up. Would you agree? It's sometimes hard to function. And in that moment, how have we come this far? Have you thought about it? How have we persisted? And if you actually deeply think about it, and for me too, I had a season of depression, it has been God whose warm hands prepares the proverbial warm food and cool drink to refresh us for the journey that we must embark on to be restored. In this passage, we come to find something very interesting. Before God could restore Elijah spiritually, He needed to restore him physically. And this is something that we need to think about. For many of us, we think that when we are, God's goal is to restore us physically. That's the end. But today I want to tell you that that's just the beginning. That's just the basis for us to trek on this journey to find the answer for something that is weighing deeply on our soul. You know, yesterday night, I actually had the best sleep I've had in so many months. I woke up today, I'm like, God, you are so good. And actually the reason was, yesterday was actually the longest Saturday we had at NSC. I was at church from 7 a.m. and we ended around 11 something p.m. And yet I realized again that rest initially may seem like everything for us, but I realized again in my life it's just the beginning. That for Elijah, God knew how much he needed. That he allowed Elijah to lie back down, to rest, to wake back up, to eat, and to strengthen his resolve to go on this journey that God has called him to go. And we come to find that God doesn't scold Elijah, but he feeds him, he restores him physically. And for some of us, God allows us to lie down so he can renew us. You know, one person this week that testified this is one of our staff members, Isaac. On Thursday, his leg broke, like he fully broke his leg. We're playing basketball. It was like game point of the last game. And he was going up for a block and he tripped and he landed on the wall. And yeah, I don't want to be too vivid, but yeah, he broke his leg and we went right to the ER and to the hospital. And I remember corresponding with him because we weren't allowed to see him and post-surgery. Isaac told me, God answered my prayers. He knew I needed rest. So he has given me rest. When you hear this, you hear perspective. That for Elijah too, this was the beginning of the restoration. He was depressed. He was downtrodden. But those few morsels of food that God gave him, the restoration of drink, after several times, he said, okay, God, okay, I'm still so broken, but I will start to walk forward. And so he started to gain the perspective to know that, as we've said, resting physically isn't the end, it's just the beginning. And so Elijah is strengthened for the journey to Horeb. And he moves forward, 40 days and 40 nights. And during this time, can I be very clear? He did not find resolution. He did not find true peace. But the truth of the matter is, he started again to not run in fear, but however slow it may have been, to walk forward in faith. Church, we have to learn something very important, because faith is not answered right away many times. God does not answer us just because we have faith, right? Like we think about it, right? We think about, okay, God, if I actually get on my knees and pray to you, Lord, you will answer. And we expect, or we want to expect certain things. But the thing that we have to believe about God is that his timing, his will, and his heart for us is perfect. Amen, church? And for Elijah, he needed those 40 days and 40 nights to start to remember what God has done in his life. And so from here, we have to think and remember this about physical rest, that God restores us physically so that we can walk towards spiritual restoration. Let's see what happens when he arrives at Mount Horeb. There he came to a cave and lodged in it, and behold, the word of the Lord came to him, and he said to him, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" And he said, "I've been very jealous for the Lord, the God of hosts. For the people of Israel have forsaken your covenant, thrown away down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword. And even I only am left, and they seek my life to take it away." And he said, "Go out and stand on the mount before the Lord." And behold, the Lord passed by, and a great and strong wind tore the mountains and broke in pieces the rock before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, in his cloak, and after the fire, the sound of a low whisper. And when Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in a cloak and went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. And behold, there came a voice to him and said, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" So we see this portion with the bookends of "What are you doing here, Elijah?" that God says. And in this, we come to find several things. First, we see that Elijah in this cave, he starts to voice his loneliness and his frustration. He comes into the presence of God and says, "God, I've been jealous for you. I've been advocating for your name. I've been living my life for your glory, and I am here alone. Lord, this is genuinely how I feel." And we come to find something very interesting that I know we talked about at retreat, but I think we need to highlight here. That God could have shown himself in the wind, and there's times that he does that. God could have shown himself through the earthquake, where there's times that he does that. You guys remember the cross where you see the veil ripped. God moves through the fire as he has done with Moses. But in this situation, God is not in any of them, but he comes rather in a gentle whisper. Or in Hebrew, what we feel is a sound in thin silence. And God says, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" And right here, you come to find several things about the question that God asked. He's bringing Elijah back to the core problem in Elijah's life. Elijah, or the core issue. why are you really here? And one thing that we come to find about silence is that's what silence does. It reveals what is core to our heart. But the reality, and we shared this at retreat, for many of us, is we reject silence. Would you agree? We distract ourselves from silence. We fill our life with white noise. We try to always be in the presence of something. Silence is so uncomfortable for many of us. And yet, one thing we find from this passage is Elijah was shown by God, and God is showing us. For us to get to the core of the issue, we need to embrace the silence. Because in the silence, God clarifies and He lets arise the things that are really going on in our hearts. And He asks that question to us. What are you doing, Joe? What are you doing, Joe? Why are you here, Joe? And when we allow Him to speak, when we embrace the silence and allow Him to speak, He speaks so loudly. And I shared this story, I think once or twice before. But there was a transformative moment in my life where God clearly spoke through the silence. I remember I was in 7th grade. I just come back, or 8th grade. I've just come back from living in South Africa for 1 year. My parents were there. My father was working on his dissertation. He had a sabbatical. As you guys know, my father's a pastor. And so he wanted to get away where literally no one could contact him. So he went from California to South Africa, right? And actually at that time, a lot of Koreans were there. Actually, Chance would live there for a little bit. So believe it or not, there's a remnant of like Korean pastors that are in South Africa. And so I remember in my time in South Africa, God opened my eyes to just the brokenness of the world, the conflicts, and just a racial tension that was happening there. So I came back, and when I came back, I had just such restlessness because I missed a year. All my friends seemed to have progressed in their life. I kind of felt like I was taken out. I came back, and everyone was living life, and especially being a junior high kid, like you feel all these emotions about your identity, etc. And so, I was already overwhelmed with many different things. And I was so frustrated because the first thing I remember that I heard was, ooh, ooh, ah, ah, the monkey's back. Okay, junior high kids are mean. Okay, can't you say I missed you? I know I do have big ears, but I guess I look more like a Simeon back then than now. But the truth of the reality is I was like, why? And I start getting this frustration in my heart of everyone telling me, okay, you missed a year, so you're the pastor's kid, so you got to do this, 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 and this. And our junior high ministry was like the teachers and the pastors like, okay, Joe, you're back. All right, let's do this, 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 this. Being a PK, that's just what happens, right? And I remember I was forced to go to a thing called Yugo Missions, which was missions in Mexico. So I was in California. It was not that long, 3 hours drive. And I remember it was a second night where around the campfire, one of the guys was playing a guitar and we're singing, Kumbaya, Alabare, 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 mi señor, right? Whatever it may be, hey. And I remember one of the guys, a guy who called me a monkey in the first place when I first came, he went and whispered in my ear, are you enjoying worship, you evil white monkey? Okay, number one, I'm not white. Number two, evil. And I snapped. And I saw red. And I gained my consciousness as he was on the ground. There was a lot of dust. All the teachers, 2 teachers were holding me back because I was pretty big. I was around this size in 8th grade. I stopped growing in 8th grade. And I remember this with my eyes blaring. And I was shaking. And everyone around me looked at, like, I felt as if they're looking at me like I was a monster. And that moment, I remember that night, I sat outside, and I felt so much shame. I felt so much brokenness. I felt so empty. I was like, I'm here on missions, and I am perpetuating violence. It doesn't matter what he said. And then I started saying things like, like, what am I gonna do for my dad? Like, it's gonna bring shame to our church. And like, I remember I told you guys, right, when I was 7 years old, someone told me that our church will rise and fall with my behavior. And I was just thinking about all these things. And in that moment, it was silent. And I was there for over 40 minutes. And at the end of those 40 minutes, all of a sudden, like the wind, like for Elijah, I heard a voice. And this was the only time I clearly remember hearing the voice of God, where God said, Joe, you know I love you. And those hands that you think are dirty, you are now going to fully use for me. And that moment, can I be completely honest? It was as if every single emotion was swept away. Every single thought of brokenness was uplifted. And this is actually what we see in Elijah's story. This is the truth that will set you free. Can we read verse 14? And we're going to read to the end. He said, I've been very jealous for the Lord, the God of hosts. For the people of Israel have forsaken your covenant, thrown down your altars, and killed your prophet with the sword. And I, even I only am left. They seek my life and take it away. And this is important. This is what God says. And the Lord said to him, go, return on your way to the wilderness of Damascus. And when you arrive, you shall anoint Hazael to be the king over Syria, and Jehu, the son of Nimshi, you shall anoint to be the king over Israel, and Elisha, the son of Shaphat of Abel Meholah, you shall anoint to be the prophet in your place, and the one who escapes from the sword of Hazael shall Jehu put to death. And the one who escapes from the sword of Jehu shall Elisha put to death. Yet I will leave 7,000 in Israel, all the knees that have not bowed to Baal, and every mouth that has not kissed him. So he departed from them and found Elisha, the son of Shaphat, who was plowing with 12 yoke of oxen in front of him, and he was with the 12th. Elijah passed by him and cast his cloak upon him, and he left the oxen and ran after Elisha, saying, let me kiss my father and my mother, then I'll follow you. And he said to him, go back again for what I have done to you. And returned from following him, and took the yoke of oxen and sacrificed them, and boiled their flesh with the yoke of the oxen and gave it to the people. And they ate. And then he rose and went after Elijah and assisted him. Okay, there's a lot to unpack here. Number one, you're like, okay, wait. You're expecting God to say something so comforting to Elijah, right? Here it's like, Elijah, like, you're good. I got you. But what actually does God say? We learn a lot from this. What God tells Elijah is, bro, you have so much that you're going to have to do. You're going to have to anoint kings. You are called to change nations. Elijah, I called you to do it. And in this, you come to find something very important about God. And what he actually did for me was actually this. Before God restores us, he must restore our perspective. I'm going to say that one more time. The way God restores us is he gives us perspective. And then he reminds us of our purpose. So, in my case especially, God reminded me that my actions the reason why I was blessed was when God said, my hands will now be used for him. These hands that I felt were used for violence because I fought a lot when I was young. I had a lot of anger in my heart, and that anger was the definitive quality that I thought was me. But in that moment, God revealed to me, these hands that you've used for evil, I'm going to use for good. He revealed to me who I was. The way God uplifts us from depression, the way God uplifts us from isolation is to give us perspective. And you see that Elijah told God, I'm alone. I'm the only one that has done it. And God, you know what he says? Number one, there's 7,000 other people that love me and are honoring me. You are not alone. You're not alone. And up till this, there's a part of you that thought that you have done it. But I'm the one that has used you, and I'm calling you again. I'm going to use you again. Remember that I'm the one that called you to be my prophet. I'm the one that used you for the glory that this world has seen. And I'm going to use you again. Go back the way you have come. And here we come to find that God replaces the isolation in our life, the silence in our life, with truth and with perspective. He always begins with revealing what is actually real in our life. That the reason why we're depressed is that we are looking at, however right we think it may be, what is a lie that the evil one has perpetuated in our heart. And that's my prayer for many of us, and that's my prayer. I know Isaac is watching on our live stream. He even asked me for more passages that he could read. He told me, Pedro, I don't want to get distracted. You know, the moments of silence, I want to embrace. Could you give me a book to read? And I told him, Isaiah. Through the hopelessness, we come to find that God is our hope. And to Isaac, for you who are watching, for the rest of us, what's going to restore us in this season is perspective. We need to remember who we are. God says to Elijah, what? Why are you here? I have not called you to be here. But God is also a God of grace who knows that Elijah needs God to remind him and to re-energize him for the call that he has. Church, don't let your discouragements and your downtroddenness define your calling. And embrace silence. Come into the presence of God. Allow him to give you perspective. And allow him afterwards to renew your purpose. Because then, when God renews your heart, he will reassign your hands. He will give you that. And when God restores us, he always renews our purpose and our perspective. And he calls us to do it together. He always calls us from isolation to community. Church, you and I can't do it alone. No matter how strong you think you are, Elijah only got weaker because he ran away and he was isolated. I promise you, if he ran to the 7,000 other people, if his eyes were open, if he saw the blind spots of his spiritual pride, then he would not have gone through what he went through. And yet, God is a God of grace. No matter how many times that happened in Elijah's life, and no matter how many times it happens in ours, God will always, with love, say, why are you here, Joe? You know my heart. And yet I will wait for you until you remember. Church, when the fire fades and fear whispers, listen to the gentler voice, the one that still says, you are not done yet. Get up and go back the way you've come. Church, some of us are holding on to doubt, holding out to fear, and we are isolating ourselves. And yet, even in that, God's going to encounter you. He's there. But you need to embrace the silence. And once you embrace the silence and you allow God to rise up all the things in your heart, allow him to give you perspective. Allow him to realign yourself back to why you are living. You know how many people come to me, tell me how much counseling or whatever therapy hasn't worked, right? It might help for a second, but it goes back to the void. As I've experienced in my life, and hopefully you can experience with yours, the only thing that can restore you fully is getting to get a glimpse of the heart of God for you. That is the only thing that could truly renew. And I pray that we at NSC may desire to pursue this and to turn from fear. And even if it's slow steps and takes you the proverbial 40 days and 40 nights, to walk in faith towards Christ.